Okay. So let's just start with a seated centering, a couple of minutes, and it's the 20th today, September 20th. So come into your preferred cross-legged position and just take some time with it. And try to become very even. This pose will always be a little asymmetrical because we have to always have one leg or the other in front, but we're going to try to make it as even as we can across the sitting bones where the shins meet, attempting to get the knees as low as each other. If you have a knee that floats or two knees, you want to support your knees always. And then give yourself enough height under the sitting bones that you really can sense your spine standing tall, which has an immediate effect on the brain. And then spending some time with your hands down to put your shoulders into alignment with your hips. Feeling your chest lifting and spreading. And then when you're ready, moving your hands together in front of the heart. Closing your eyes and just gently looking toward your cheeks. Bringing attention into the parts of your body that are either meeting the floor directly or meeting the floor through your props. Inviting a sense of release. Maybe trying to sense the weight of the legs. And treat your shoulders as part of your grounded body. Just let them kind of hang softly. Try to unhinge your lower jaw. Relax your tongue inside of your mouth. Observing your breath flow. Observing the volume of thought waves this morning. And maybe inviting an intention into your heart for this practice or maybe for this day. See if you can bow toward the heart without losing the lift and spread of the chest. Release your hands. And on an in-breath, raise your head. Let your eyes gently open. And welcome. All right, so we're going to do a backbending practice today with a lot of emphasis on leg actions. So there's three components to that. There's the flexibility of the legs, which we're going to work with. There's the stability of the legs, meaning the power of the legs. And there's the alignment. So we'll kind of work with those three pieces in some various backbends today. And I'm going to have us start in hero pose. So you're going to set up your hero pose. We are going to actually take reclining hero pose at the end of the class. So we want to just kind of get the legs initiated here. Hero pose is a wonderful way to stretch your legs, but you might need lots of propping. So it's not a pose you want to avoid necessarily, but you do always want to have sufficient support. And that could mean that you have a lot of support between your buttocks and your feet. It could mean that you sandwich a blanket behind your knees. Some of us have real limited knee flexion, or we have injuries in our knees. So you might have to include some sort of a spacer there, which can really give your knees a lot of support to put something there. And we want to keep the alignment in mind. So we don't want to compromise the alignment just to kind of imitate the shape of the pose. So we definitely want the knees closer together than the feet. Some people call this W sitting. And you definitely want your toes pointing straight back, not turned out sideways. And then I usually take some time to grab my feet individually, just kind of turn the outer feet down toward the floor to lift the inner feet up to correct some of that distortion that happens. I also adjust my shins so that the flesh of the calf muscles moves out. We want to feel the outer shins really moving toward the floor, not away. These are really the anchors of the pose. And then you want to look at your kneecaps. And a lot of times we see inward rotation of the inner upper kneecaps. We definitely want to be able to raise those up to be as level with the outer and upper kneecaps. So look at your four corners of your kneecaps and hopefully they're all pointing forward. And then you'll just place your hands onto your feet and align your shoulders back and align your skull above your spine and try to bring your tailbone in so that you're keeping your abdomen and your lower back kind of even. And just bringing awareness to the front ankles. The arches of your feet are getting some nice support here. Your shins are getting a beautiful stretch. Your quadriceps are stretching. Your knees are stretching. This is very healthy to do for your knees if you are in alignment. So some people avoid this pose because of knee stuff, but if you're in alignment, it's actually really beneficial to your knee health as long as you're propped and in alignment. Okay. So let's now raise the arms. Take your arms straight overhead and just treat your arms like extensions of your torso. So lifting the side ribs, lifting the back side ribs. Use your arms to bring a sense of lifting to the rib cage, but not really letting your shoulders crowd your ear space. So somehow also keeping your shoulders anchored into the trunk as you reach up through the fingertips. And then also just try to move the arms any amount farther back without that cheating. We're so clever, our bodies are so clever. Sometimes we push the head forward as a way to think that we move the hands back. You're going to move the hands back without the head misaligning. And then take your elbows in your hands. And once you have your elbows, just gently draw the elbows slightly farther back. And just try to sense into your shoulder blades. Gently pushing them toward the chest. Reach up through the elbow tips, armpits getting a nice opening experience. And then re-extend the arms just so that we can change the crossing of the arms. So bring the arms up again, and then moving to the opposite crossing of the arms. And just a couple moments here, still lengthening up through the elbows. And when we're in back bending, we tend to have our attention fly up. So just bringing awareness today throughout the practice to maybe keep your temples soft, keep your gaze soft. Try not to have your eyes roll up. Good. Re-extend the arms down and release the arms. All right, so we'll come out of the hero leg position. We're going to do a chair version of downward dog because I think it's a deeper stretch for the legs. And today we really want to access the flexibility of our legs so that it benefits us in our back bends. So you'll use a chair. We're going to stand up. We'll use the seat of the chair for the hands. And the idea is to put the torso and arms at an angle, but the legs will stay vertical. The legs will stay right beneath you. Your heels will remain in line with your hips. So you'll grab the chair and you'll start to walk yourself back. And depending on what you did over the weekend and how you woke up this morning, you just have to honor where you are physically. You might feel like you need to bend your knees. You might feel like you can't be that far from the chair. So just find your first edge and make sure your feet are hip distance and your toes are straight in front of your heels. And lengthening the hips away from the edge of that chair. gently start to elongate the backs of the legs, any degree that you can. Start to open the backs of your knees and think about the inner knees rolling back. And you're keeping your legs somewhat firm. So even if your knees are bent and you're trying to gently squeeze the quadriceps muscles onto the bones, you're finding your active legs here. Just a few more breaths. Keep working that edge, that physical edge, breathing into sensation. And now we're going to kind of target the calf muscles and the quadriceps. So just bring your weight slightly forward so that you can bring your right foot underneath the chair. And we're going to take kind of a lunging position here. So you want to end up with your right knee on top of your right ankle and your left leg straight, and you're still using the chair for support. And now this is targeting your left calf muscle. So I want you to really press out through the left heel. Attempt to completely extend your left leg. And think about the inner left knee, the inner left thigh gently moving toward the ceiling. Breathe into that stretch. Breathe, breathe, breathe. And now we'll kind of target right hamstrings. So you can pivot your left foot so that you can ground it. You're going to put your whole left foot down. You're going to straighten your right leg. And you may be able to bend your elbows and come in a little deeper. You might stay on your long arms. You might be able to go to forearms. Just depends on what your body is telling you today. Keep your legs firm and straight here. This is our Parsvottanasana, of course. And just breathing into your right hamstrings. But we don't want to see that flaccid right kneecap. So you're squeezing your right quadriceps. And you're giving this your breath. And just notice how momentum shifts our weight to the right here. So you're just going to gently pour some weight over the toes to the left. So you're going to bring additional weight to your right big toe, your left small toe, just to bring more evenness across the 10 toes. Just about 5 more breaths here. Keep rolling the right inner knee back. A lot of us are probably seeing a little turnout. So just directing that right inner knee back. You want to keep your right knee pointing forward, not rotating out. And now you're going to gently start to transition so that you can bring your left foot under the chair and step your right leg back. We're going to start in that lunge. So keep your right heel lifted and start to create the deepest square shape that you can with your left leg. So we're attempting one day to have your left thigh level with the floor. In other words, a 90-degree knee. But do your best to be wherever you need to be for this. And remember, this one's really about targeting our right calf muscle. So we want to really press out through the right heel. We want to keep a sense of full extension on the right leg. We want to roll the inner right knee toward the ceiling. And we're against gravity here. Remember, leg compaction. So you want to resist your right front thigh toward the back right thigh. Against gravity, compact the leg. Just a couple more breaths. See if you can bring the heel any amount closer to the floor. Good, I saw some legs move there. And now we're going to pivot that right foot so that you have the full sole of the foot down. You're going to turn the toes slightly out. You're straightening your left leg. And you're firming both legs. And again, watch that left knee. It's probably going to try to turn out here. So keep rolling that inner left knee kind of toward the mat or toward the back of your mat even. And then decide if you're going to stay on long arms. You can put your wrists right under your shoulders, Kathleen. Decide if you might bend the elbows and decide if maybe you could go to your forearms. You just have to kind of sense into the body and find that first edge where there's enough sensation. It's not overwhelming though. And you're going to give it some breath. You can literally see the left knee. So keep eyes on your knee and observing the four corners, staying pointing forward. If we know the habits of our legs, when we get into some of the back bends where we can't see the legs, we will still know what to do because we have done that work to kind of know the habits and know how to make those corrections. I'm just giving the breath to the left hamstrings here. Keep working into a more extended left leg, even if you still have a bent knee. There was a quote I just read, and I'm totally missing the context and probably going to butcher the whole thing, but somebody doing something for 90 years of their life was asked why they're still doing it. And he said, I think I'm starting to make progress, which I thought was hilarious because I feel like sometimes that's how I feel about yoga. I'm just going to keep doing it. And there's just, sometimes it feels like a glacial speed that we progress. But who's to say it needs to happen quickly, right? Okay, so we're going to start to transition out of this, and you can just kind of bring your weight forward. And we are going to be using the chair behind us now. So depending on where you are and how you're set up, you can either move your chair or just set up with that chair where it is, but you're going to be facing away from it. And we're going to be kneeling on a blanket in the center of the mat. So now we're going to do a little flexibility work, stretching with the hip flexors, which, as we know, are a very key role in our back bends. They can be very limiting to spinal movement if they're tight. So we want to definitely get some extension across the hip flexors here so that we can optimize our back bends. And we'll also kind of weave in a camel pose in a few moments here. So you're going to step your right foot forward, keep your left knee kneeling, and the chair is behind you. And you're going to use the chair for your hands for support. So it's going to distort the pose a little bit, but for our intents and purposes, it's okay. What we're really trying to key into is moving the pelvis forward, keeping the tailbone curling into the front body. So the distortion is that you're kind of more tilted back than you would be in a pose without the chair. But keep some pressure in your hands. And we're really not paying much attention to the right leg. So don't worry too much about what's happening with the right leg. But continue to kind of, I think about ironing out the hip flexor region, trying to smooth that crease to open this area of the body that does a lot more flexion than it does extension. So breathing into that, yawning open. And I want you to just consider your left inner thigh, which is probably trying to rotate forward here. So one big action of our legs in back bends is to keep track of those inner thighs. You want to roll that left inner thigh back. Keep the midline of your left thigh vertical. We don't want that turning out. And just a few more breaths. Really take that tailbone into the soft tissue of the body. If you have any discomfort in your low back, that's a sign that you need a stronger pelvic tilt. 3 more good inhalations here. And now sometimes we don't know how deep we've gotten until we come out. So I want you to imagine you're being lifted by a rope through the top of your head. You're inhaling and you're going to shift your weight back, or shift your pelvis back until you can switch out your legs. And then you'll place your right knee, step your left foot forward. It's fine to just have your left heel under your left knee. You can always be on your fists if your wrists aren't super happy about being flexed so long or so much. Try to rotate the shoulders back, use your shoulder blades, bring them forward. Take that tailbone and just bring it into the front body. Tip that pelvis back, shift the pelvis forward, the whole pelvic bowl, slide it forward in space. Try to prevent, try to prevent your foot swinging in, your knee swinging out. Also try to prevent that inner thigh from rolling forward. So keep your right foot directly behind your right knee. Roll the right inner thigh back. And again, watch the temples and the eyeballs. You might be kind of bugging out or looking up or feeling kind of upregulated. So keep a sense of descending flesh on your temples, soft gaze, soft lower jaw. I'm particularly a mess this morning because I did a whole weekend of work, yard work, to prepare for my wedding on this Saturday. So I wanted to I was kind of dreading backbend week, to be honest. But I thought maybe we could all do something a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, but for me. Hopefully it's serving you as well. All right, one more big breath. And then you're going to gently shift your weight back and then find a way to step your left knee back to the blanket. And now we're going to transition to do a couple camel poses. So the first one, we'll keep the chair where it is. You're going to keep kneeling where you are and make sure your feet are directly behind your knees. And we're going to use the seat of the chair like we just did for Anjaneyasana, except we're now doing Ustrasana, which is camel pose. Again, you can be on your hands or your fists, depending on what you need. I'm kind of grabbing the edge of my chair so that I can work my shoulder rotation kind of a little bit deeper. So I'm kind of knuckles facing out to the sides. I'm trying to coil my shoulder blades in. I'm trying to roll the flesh of the shoulders so that I can externally rotate. And just bringing weight into your hands. I want you to think about your hip flexors here. So you have a little bit too much of a forward pelvic tilt, Kathleen. So see if you can bring your belly button in and press the midline of the buttocks forward. That's better. Good. Inner thighs rolling back. Think about your thighs having two parallel lines running down the front centers of them. And we're not so much involved with the head throwing back here because we're in a very modified pose. If you do camel pose, the completion, the last piece of it is the head coming back, but we're not going to add that because we're not in our full camel pose. We're in a very modified camel pose. Just iron out those hip flexors. I think it's Judy, keep your hips above your knees. Don't let your hips move back. So imagine your hips up against a wall. Good, better. And if your butt is clamping, inner thighs need to roll back more. Good. And now inhale, lift, lift, lift. Come upright. We're going to use the chair in front of us. I realize everybody has a different size chair. So instead of asking you to put your hip points on your chair edge, you're just going to bring your chair to meet your front body somewhere. And then the work will be to maintain that contact as we go back, because just like I just said, we don't want to let our hips move back. That's another clever way the body sneaks out of these deeper poses. So now additionally, if you don't have a bolster, you're going to have to create something to put on top of your calf muscles so that you have support underneath your fingertips. So this could be an assembly of blankets and blocks. It could be a stack of blankets. Doesn't matter as long as it's somewhat firm and it's within reach. Those are kind of the two things you need to have happening here. So something you can touch that's going to be resting on top of those calf muscles. Okay. So first step, don't touch whatever you've put there. Make sure you're in contact with your chair and that your hips are starting in line with your knees. And then keeping that, bring your fingertips onto whatever you've placed. And now the work is to press deeper into the props that are on your calf muscles, but to keep yourself, keeping the hip flexors forward. So keep scooping the tailbone in, moving the buttock line forward, ironing out the hip flexors, keeping the sternum really broad and lifted. You guys look great. Roll the inner thighs back. Don't let the butt turn into a nugget. Keep your temples soft. Good. And now inhale like you have that big thick rope through the crown of your head. Come up. And you're going to sit down on your prop setup and just take a rest. We have one more version, so I just want you to get a little bit of a rest here. And hopefully your strap isn't too far away. You're going to locate that. So the last version we're going to do, I love because it manually pulls those inner thighs back and it manually lets us do this really wonderful heart opening position with our arms. So once you've rested long enough, you can sit back up. We don't need any support over our legs. You can move that aside. It won't hurt to keep it there either, so you decide. And we're going to take the strap around our lower back. And then you're going to just be passing these tails to the inner thighs, handing them back to yourself behind you, and you're not crossing them. So the right one stays on the right side, the left one stays on the left side. What you don't want to have are twists, because twists can pinch. So just try to kind of floss the strap in your hands so you're making sure you're not twisting, especially around the inner thighs. It might not feel good. So you have this harness that runs around your lower back and along the inner thighs. You're going to attempt to grab it kind of right underneath the buttock line. You can go wider if you like, but right underneath the buttock line is a nice spot. And then still looking to make sure you have your feet in alignment with your knees. So you can use the chair if it's helpful, you don't have to, but you're going to begin to gently pull the straps out. So have your palms facing forward. I think it's pence. I can't tell, but it looks, there you go. And then make sure your hips are staying forward. If you don't have the chair to tell you as much, you have to keep more awareness on that. Keep the tailbone moving in, keep the hip flexors elongating, extending. And again, this won't be your deepest Ustrasana, but we're just really imprinting some wise actions. Roll your outer shins down. Grip the floor with the small toes as best you can. And keep moving the strong assistance you're giving your inner thighs might be distorting your pelvic tilt. So you have to challenge that and come back to your tipping your pelvis back. Don't let this pulling action dump the pelvis forward. Keep tilting pelvis back. Just a few more breaths. Good. And now lifting yourself up and out of it. You can release your strap and kind of untangle it from your body. We're going to come on to our front bodies with some padding right along the hip line. So you can keep your blanket that you're kneeling on. We'll put the chair aside. And I like to work with the folded edge where my hips will be, and then the rest of it going toward my feet. Okay, so we're going to start with Sphinx Pose. Sorry, I'm just moving some things out of my way here. So we're going to just take care of the legs. You're going to press each foot individually into the floor so that you can lift your inner thigh up and roll your outer thigh down. So this is setting up your legs. Make sure your feet are as wide as your hips. Your small toes are down. And then you can just let the legs rest. Place your elbows underneath your shoulders. Keep your palms up for now. And then find a way to take the tailbone into the floor. And think again about the hip flexors. If there's little gaps between the hip flexors and the floor, you're ironing them out. You're pressing gently those hips into the floor, the pelvis into the floor. And then just try to scrub your elbows toward your hip line to help the shoulder blades move in. And let your work be the soft buttocks, the lifted inner thighs, the lift and spread of the chest, and the soft, gentle gaze. Imagining the outer hips rolling down. Relax your lower jaw. And try to think about your neck. Is it consistent with the rest of the spine, or is it distorted because you're looking at something? You might need to close your eyes to sense the alignment of the neck. Sometimes our gaze can distort neck alignment just because we get kind of locked into staring at something. And now just gently shift your palms to be down and your inner wrists to roll down without losing that sensation across your chest. And just a few more breaths here. So we can't just check these things off and forget about them. Keep circulating throughout the body, the buttocks, the inner thighs, the small toes, the pelvis, the hip flexors, the temples, the jaw. And after an in-breath, just softly make a little pillow out of your arms, rest one of your cheeks, bend your knees, and gently, not quickly, gently move your legs from side to side. So we did one quadriceps stretch with hero pose, but we're going to do another one now because the quadriceps being tight is another kind of inhibiting factor for back bends. So just leave your right forearm in front of you. It's going to be a pillow for your forehead. We want our legs to be in alignment with our hips. So make sure your feet are only as wide as your hips. And then you're going to bend your left knee and reach back for the foot. And those of you that can't reach the foot, you can make a loop out of your strap and, excuse me, hold the foot that way. So once you have hold of your foot, for most of us, we got short in the hip flexor. So you can put your head down and listen. I'm going to keep mine up so I can talk to you, but feel free to rest your forehead on your arm. And just start to begin that work of lengthening the left hip flexor, which you can kind of do that by taking the pelvis and tilting it back, taking the tailbone to the floor. You can lengthen out through the four corners of the left kneecap. And because our knees like to go wide here, I want you to track your knee slightly toward midline and your small toe into your hand that you're holding or into your strap. Meanwhile, right leg should be passive. So sometimes it's helpful to just keep your awareness in the passive side of the pose. The buttocks are soft, the inner thighs are lifted. Just a couple more breaths here. You're going to start to release the hold of the foot. And again, go back to windshield wiper legs. just to give your lower back some rest, give your pelvis some rest. And then you can keep your right knee bent. Make sure your left leg comes into alignment, extended on the floor. Your left arm will be for your forehead. And then the right hand will reach back for the top of the foot, or again, you can hold with the strap. And just peek back at your knee. And if you see your knee is already wider than your hip, step it into line with the hip. And then again, we're just going to begin to close that gap, breath by breath. Extend out through the four corners of the right knee. Lift your inner thighs. Both small toes should be working back to the floor, not rolling to the ceiling. And again, just gently keep tracking your right knee toward midline to prevent that rotation that happens. Keeping the tailbone continuing to turn toward the floor. Good. Now start to softly release the hold of the foot. You can keep the knee bent, bend the left knee as well, move the legs from side to side, just slowly and gently. So locust pose is interesting because we use the leg to move the spine. So we're going to do the first version with our head down for more support. So you can go back to using your right forearm for your forehead. You can extend both legs now. And then just kind of make sure you're back in your alignment with your legs, that your feet are as wide as your hips. We're going to put the right leg off duty, so it's just heavy and passive once you have it in alignment. And on an exhale, imagine someone just grabbed your left ankle and you're going to start to lift your straight leg from the floor. You're more concerned, so not the bent knee, your straight leg tense, and you're more concerned with length than how high it rises. Okay, so your head is pressing against your right forearm, which I'm not doing because otherwise you couldn't hear me. But you're going to notice that your inner thigh, you really have to resist it up. And you have to resist your small toe down. And there's an emphasis on lengthening the leg. And as it rises, the spine is taking a really nice, juicy extension. Okay, so just a couple more breaths. Of course, in the full pose, we have both legs up and both arms up. So we're just kind of isolating this out initially. Lengthen your leg back to the floor. And again, go back to windshield wipers just to release your back from any strain. We don't want to carry forth. And then reset your legs, and we'll use the left forearm to rest the forehead. Your left leg is just going to be in alignment, but then dense, heavy weight. Inactive, just a heavy weight. On an exhale, start to lift the right leg from the floor as if someone's grabbing the ankle and pulling away from your hip line, pulling out across the floor. Keep the inner thigh lifting, the small toe rolling down. And use the leg to bring the spine into extension. And now gently bring it back to the floor. And again, go ahead and take care of yourself with a few windshield wipers. And now you're going to rest on one cheek and put both hands next to your thighs with your palms up. Make sure your legs are in place. They're in alignment. And now bring your chin to the floor. And on an exhale, you're going to lift everything up and look back to see that your wrists are as high as your shoulders. And turn the flesh of the arms from the front arms to the backs of the arms, the shoulders, front armpit to the back armpit. And keep lengthening those legs, lifting the inner thighs, rolling the outer hips down, rolling the small toes down, curling the tailbone into the floor. Shoot the breastbone forward. Extend up through your fingernails. Good. Release. Make a little pillow out of your arms. Sweep the legs back and forth. So one way we get injured in backbending practice is we focus too much on the spine directly. And what I wanted to kind of bring to this week of insight is that we can really think about the limbs being the primary activators and the spine being kind of the byproduct, so that we don't overdo these poses to a point of injury. So let's do it one more time with Locust Pose. You're going to start again with your palms face up. When we have the arms in this position, there's a natural drooping quality to the shoulders. So you really have to work yourself back to that external shoulder rotation. So starting with good leg alignment, your legs are centered up on the floor. All four corners of the kneecaps are pointing down. Look forward, and on an exhale, pick everything up. Try to raise the wrists as high as the shoulders. You might need to look back to see. Roll the inner knees up, inner thighs up, small toes down, outer hips down, tailbone to the floor, fingernails reaching back. One more big inhale. And then exhale, releasing. Crossing your arms and moving the legs from side to side. Beautiful. So now we're gonna flip ourselves over. We're gonna be using a strap in two places to kind of explore the bridge pose a little bit and how the legs affect the bridge pose. So the first version we're going to use is we're going to be strapping the feet. So you're going to make a loop that, when placed around both feet in your bridge pose, your feet will be as wide as your hips. Well, kind of have to guesstimate, and then you'll probably have to clean it up a little bit. Try it on and then see about it. So we can use the strap for information. What we know about back bends is they tend to force us to turn our feet out. So we have a lot of work to do to keep our toes in front of our heels. So I want you to just play for a few moments here what it feels like when you're trying to turn your toes out, what the strap feels like. And then when you're trying to keep your toes in alignment with your heels, you'll probably feel more pressure to that part of the strap that's closer to your upper body. So when you're turning your toes out, there's pressure to that part of the strap. And when you're aligning, you probably feel more even on the strap with the outer feet. So what we're going for is we're going to try to use the strap for feedback. So now pull your heels in as close to your sitting bones as they can be. Be in good alignment, meaning you have even pressure to the strap. You're not just on the strap part closest to the toes, which means you're turning out. And then you're going to extend your arms so your palms are down, your arms are straight. You're going to press your shoulders down, lift your shoulder blades up, and then tip the pelvis back so you're squeezing that gap shut between the lower back and the floor. On an exhale, lift your hips up. But just bringing awareness, shine that light of awareness to the pressure of your feet into your strap and how it wants to turn out. You're going to keep training the kind of the center of the outer foot into that strap, even though it wants to be lighter. Meanwhile, roll your inner thighs down and press into your big toes. And remember, if your butt is a little nugget, you have more work to do in the legs, more work to do in the pelvic tilt. Iron out your hip flexors, raise the hips higher, get your chest vertical. Good, one more breath here, and then exhale, walk it down. So you're gonna rest here. We're gonna do this version with the feet one more time, just so we can really feel it. But let the neutral lumbar curve return. Be free and easy here. Let your breath be free and easy. Okay, second attempt, make sure the arms are straight. Your thumbs are near your hips or your buttocks. Press your palms down, roll the shoulders down, move the shoulder blades to the chest. Squeeze the lower back toward the floor, move the tailbone toward the ceiling. On an exhale, lift your hips. Bring weight into the lighter part of the strap. Keep your toes in front of your heels. Take the hips higher. Extend the hip flexors. Roll the inner thighs down by stepping more firmly, more intentionally into your legs, into your feet. And then exhale it down. Beautiful. You can slide your strap now to your knees. So I have it right behind my knees and also right above my kneecaps. So that's for me a good placement. I didn't have to change my strap. You might. What you need to see is that your hips and knees are in a consistent width. They're the same width. And then inch your heels closer to your sitting bones. So again, your knees, when you do back bends, they want to go wide, which of course shortens the sacral band, which of course makes everything uncomfortable. So when we have knees clamping, we have broadened feeling in the lower back. That's a good thing. So we're going to use this strap again. Extend your arms. Press the full surface area of the palms and finger pads down. Try to get the shoulders to sit down. Lift your shoulder blades into your chest. Tilt the pelvis back, sealing the lumbar curve to the floor. On an exhale, lift the hips and use that strap. Use the strap to keep the knees together. Drop the buttocks to the floor. Remember, ripe tomatoes hanging from the vine. You can actually touch your butt and feel if it's tight or soft here. Pressing into your big toes. Drive the inner thighs down. Power up the legs. Really stamp into your feet. Raise the hips higher. Lengthen the hip flexors. One more in-breath. Exhale, walk it down. Good. If you like, you can pick up your feet and just hug the legs in. We are going to do it one more time. So just do something that kind of relieves you. You might kind of rock here and massage your lower back. So do something that feels good. And for some of us, we have more work to do in the feet, some of us more with the knees. So you might have a version of this that you prefer. So just notice that, or maybe one that you find more helpful. And then you're going to set up the second attempt here. So you want your feet in nice and close. You want your arms extended, shoulders down, minimal space between the back body and the floor. And on an exhale, press the hips up. Press the feet deeply into the floor. Relax the buttocks as much as you can. Curl the tailbone up to the ceiling. Keep your temples soft. Keep the knees contained so the sacrum can be broad. And walk it down. Beautiful. You can slide your strap off. And again, draw the knees in. You might grab the shins. You might prefer under the thighs. And then just kind of cup your knees and circle them around. And make sure to do both directions. And you're going to gently roll to your side. So this is where we're gonna do reclining hero pose, which is pretty deep back bend. And again, support is really the name of the game. If you know that you need to modify this pose, you can do a cross-legged reclining supported back bend on a bolster or whatever setup looks like a bolster, which I'll walk us through in a moment. So if you want to skip the hero legs and just do the upper body back bend, that's totally your choice. But let's set up the full pose to begin with the hero legs. So if you need the padded shins, you can put a blanket down. We do want to have the sitting bones grounded. So sometimes there's a question, do they still need to be grounded when we're reclining the pose? Yes, they do. And then for a lot of us, we need quite ample height to support the torso, meaning you probably will need to angle it up to your body, myself included. So I usually use a series of blocks. When I'm really tight, I go for medium tall. When I'm not as tight, I go for low medium. So meaning the head is always going to be slightly higher than that middle block between your bolster and the top block. And then I usually add even more support for my head. Okay, so this is what mine usually looks like. This is one of my more challenging poses. Although not as much anymore since I gave up running, because running really gets you really bulky in your thigh muscles, which can be very inhibiting to this pose. So before you recline, you want to take care of the alignment. See the four corners of the knee, see the toes. Make sure your sitting bones have the support they need. And then you might start to just kind of see about it. So we always have to see, even though you did it maybe just yesterday, you might have a new experience today. So you're going to come back onto your props. Beginning with your hands on your feet. Really working that gapping in the lower back, trying to lengthen that out, which you can do by tilting the pelvis back, extending out through the knees to elongate the quadriceps. You're going to keep your chin close to your chest and your soft eyes pointed toward your cheeks. You might stay here. You might be able to extend your arms and encourage the length of the torso. We don't want the knees to float. So you're anchoring your knees down, but you're also trying to roll the outer shins down. Just about 5 more breaths. And if you took your arms up, just start to move them back toward the feet. And you want to really pressurize your hands and lead with your sternum to come up. Keep your sternum really forthright up, and so that your back is not injured coming up. Lead with your chest. Good. And now you're going to turn around facing your setup. We do not want the feet on a blanket. We're going to do a quick dog just to release the legs. So make sure your feet have the traction of your mat, but we will use the bolster or whatever your support is. We will use that for the head. It's nice when you work with an incline, because then you have kind of a spectrum of placement for the head, so you can move and adjust as needed so that the head is perfectly supported. So just pick anywhere to kind of start, extend your legs, come up. You might find that that's perfect support for the head. You might come back down and realize you need to be higher or lower with the head. So, but we do want the crown of the head supported. And you just trying to get the legs really extended, the backs of the knees really open to release that Virasana, Supta Virasana, reclining hero. So it's important to always extend your legs after, that deep knee flexion kind of work. Roll the inner knees back and try to keep your legs as fully extended as you can. And now place your knees. And we're going to use the bolster to do a twist before Shavasana. So you can just align your left hip side with your bolster. And if you didn't have a bolster, you can always just throw a couple blankets on top of blocks and create that kind of same effect. Gently turn toward that setup. And then you're going to place yourself on it with your torso. And we're attempting to bring the right cheek down so that we have a completed twist. But feel free to rest the left cheek if your spine is a little bit tight. And then position your arms in a way that your shoulders are very surrendered. So try to give your shoulders some passivity. Don't be holding yourself up. And we want to make sure to twist to both sides. So you're just going to be taking your right hip to the end of that setup now. You'll be twisting your torso to face as squarely as you can, face your bolster setup. And now this time, maybe the left cheek can rest. One way you can support your shoulders releasing is to be on the backs of your hands. Sometimes that's a helpful cue to the shoulders. And then as you're ready, you're going to start to gently find your way to Shavasana with whatever support you need. You might include something rolled under your knees. Your back wants a little extra today. You might include a blanket under your head. Maybe one over your body if you're feeling cool. And we'll just do a couple minutes in Shavasana. You're always welcome to stay longer if you like. And once you're lying down on the floor, just extending the legs out, the heels away from the hips, the feet wider than the hips now, the legs passive, the toes turning out. Just like the power of the legs can move the spine, the passivity of the legs can also encourage the spine to surrender more deeply. Let's see if you can sense into the weight of your legs. Really surrender the weight into the floor. Maybe imagining the muscles of the legs falling away from the bones. Just observing anything you notice, but kind of from a distance, not really getting too involved or too engaged. Sensing any residuals from this practice. Maybe there's a new kind of vibration throughout the body. Maybe the breath is more smooth and even. Maybe there's a lower volume of thoughts. And start to encourage some deeper breaths to come and go. Maybe adding in some gentle movement, your fingers and toes. Maybe starting to rock your head from side to side. And then folding in the arms, sliding the soles of the feet to the floor. And gently easing yourself to one side. And stay for a couple moments on your side. The least amount of disturbance to the brain or body. Try to move from side lying to seated. And when you're sitting upright, joining the hands together in front of the heart. Looking down toward your cheeks. Softening the face. Let's take a breath in through the nose. And let it go. From the place within me that I know to be divine, I honor that place within each of you. Namaste. Great. Nice work, everyone. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you all soon, I hope. Bye.